The ringing in my ears sharpened as my mother's words registered. Could you just not talk about your job this time? It makes things awkward for Caroline. The salad bowl trembled in my hands. The dinner I'd flown 1,000 miles to attend suddenly felt like a stage set designed to make me disappear. I caught my reflection in the silver serving spoon, blurred, distorted, exactly how they preferred me. Sorry, I said, setting the bowl down with deliberate care, though what I wanted was to shatter it. 3 degrees, 2 patents, and 1 multi-million-dollar company I'd built from nothing. And all my mother wanted was my silence. My name is Ivy. I'm 38 and the co-founder and chief research officer at a biotech firm in Boston. This is the story of how I stopped shrinking myself for people who never saw me anyway. That weekend was supposed to be a celebration of Caroline's promotion at her marketing firm. My younger sister, golden-haired and effortlessly likable, had received a small bump in title that warranted embossed invitations and place cards from our mother. The white colonial house in Ohio felt suffocating as always, but Caroline had texted me herself, "Please come. I want you there." So I'd booked a flight, taken time off from overseeing clinical trials that could change thousands of lives, and shown up with a gift and, apparently, the implicit understanding that I should mute the part of myself I was most proud of. I watched my father raise his glass at dinner, calling Caroline his brightest star. My mother beamed. Even Uncle Jerry, who typically contributed nothing beyond weather updates, told her how proud he was. I smiled too, but something bitter coated my tongue. This wasn't an isolated incident, just the latest verse in a lifelong chorus where Caroline's feelings mattered more than my achievements. Growing up, her crayon drawings earned prominent refrigerator placement while my science fair trophies disappeared into drawers. Her B grades were met with, "She tries so hard," while my A- prompted, "What happened?" I didn't resent Caroline herself. I'd braided her hair, helped her study, written portions of her college essays. But somewhere along the way, I realized my parents only looked at me with pride when I was standing in Caroline's shadow. After dessert, I escaped to the back porch with my wine. Caroline joined me minutes later. "You okay?" she asked. "Of course," I said, turning to face her. She hesitated. "I didn't know Mom said that to you, about not talking about your work." "It's fine." "No, it's not." I shrugged, the gesture as practiced as my smile. "It's not the first time." Caroline looked away, then back at me. "You know they love you, right?" I laughed, not cruelly, just tired. "Sure, in their way." "You've done amazing things, Ivy." "Not according to Mom or Dad." Caroline bit her lip. "I think sometimes they just don't get what you do. It's intimidating." There it was again. That word. I took a sip of wine to avoid saying what I wanted to say. Caroline stepped closer. "Maybe you could try explaining it differently? Make it more accessible?" I turned to her fully then. "I've published papers, Caroline. I've spoken on panels. I mentor young women in STEM. If they wanted to understand, they could." She didn't answer. The next morning, I made breakfast out of habit. My mother drifted into the kitchen, watched me work, then said, "You always make the fluffiest pancakes." Before I could respond, she thrust her phone at me. "Can you take a picture of Caroline outside with the flowers? She looks so radiant this morning." I did as she asked, photographing my sister among the hydrangeas while my pancakes cooled. That afternoon, I packed my bag and left early, claiming a work call that wasn't entirely a lie. Back in Boston, I lost myself in the rhythm of the lab. The investor call had gone exceptionally well. We were looking at another round of funding, $30 million. I posted the news on LinkedIn with professionally polished language, excited to share that our team has secured Series B funding. I didn't tag my family. I didn't text anyone. 3 days later, my Aunt Sharon called. "Ivy, why didn't you tell us? This is incredible." "Tell you what?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "The funding. Your mom showed me the article. Said she had to Google it." "Yeah, it wasn't really dinner conversation," I replied, the edge in my voice unmistakable. After we hung up, curiosity pulled me to Facebook. There it was. My mother had shared a news article. "Local biotech startup secures $30 million. Her caption read, "Proud Mom Moment. Our daughter Ivy is changing the world. I stared at the post for a long time. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I felt still. That was when I knew something had shifted, not in them, but in me. This time, I wouldn't call to say thanks. I wouldn't fly home to make pancakes. I wouldn't take pictures of my sister in the garden. I had nothing to prove anymore. They could share posts, beam with pride to everyone else, but they still wouldn't know me. And for the first time in my life, I realized that was okay. What I needed was peace, and I had finally found it. It was strange how quickly the quiet became addictive. Back in Boston, my phone didn't ring with guilt-laden invitations. My mornings started with coffee brewed exactly how I liked it. I worked hard. I spent time with people who actually saw me. I thought maybe the peace would settle everything, but it didn't. Because a few weeks after the funding announcement, my mother called again. Finally, I answered. "Hi, Mom." "Oh, good. You picked up." She sounded breathless. "I just wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. It's still 2 months away." "Yes, but I need a head count." And Caroline was wondering if you could do your sweet potato casserole. I stared at the spreadsheets on my monitor, data points that represented years of research, and not one question from her about any of it. "I'm not sure I'll be able to come this year. We're heading into clinicals." Silence. "Oh," she said finally. "Well, Caroline is bringing Nathan. We're all very excited." Nathan, the new boyfriend. Somehow he was already woven into the family like a new decorative pillow. "Tell her congratulations," I said. Another pause. "Ivy, we just miss you. It would mean a lot to see you. You missed me when I was sitting across from you, too." I hadn't meant to say it. It just slipped out. She didn't respond right away. "I don't know what you mean by that." "I know you don't." I ended the call gently but firmly. At work, things were moving fast. We were expanding our team, onboarding a new lab, managing investor relations. I loved it every second. And then came the invitation, not from my family, but from my alma mater. They wanted me to be the keynote speaker for their annual Women in Science and Innovation event. I said yes. The night before I flew out, Caroline texted me, "Mom said you're skipping Thanksgiving. Everything okay?" I replied, "Just busy. Hope it's a good one." She sent a heart emoji. The conference was held at a historic theater near campus. I stood backstage with my notes, dressed in a black suit and heels I'd broken in with conference floors and investor meetings. I stepped up to the podium and looked out at a sea of young women, some holding notebooks, some just holding their breath. I smiled. "When I was your age," I began, "I thought success would be the thing that finally earned me a seat at my own family's table. But here's what I learned. Success doesn't change people. It just makes their blind spots more obvious." I spoke for 20 minutes about resilience, about being overlooked, about building something from the ground up. Not because someone handed you a ladder, but because you carved one from every dismissal you endured. When I stepped off stage, I was surrounded by students and faculty, some with tears in their eyes. One professor whispered, "I should have seen it in you back then." That night, I opened the family group chat. Photos of Thanksgiving had flooded the feed. Under one photo, my mother had written, "Missed Ivy today, but Caroline's new stuffing recipe was a hit." I didn't reply, but I did send a photo of the auditorium from my keynote with a simple caption. "Spoke today. Went well." No one responded. 3 days passed. Then Caroline messaged me privately. "Mom's mad. Says you were showing off," and I nearly laughed. "I was working." "I know," she said. "It's just, you know how she is." Caroline paused. "It's like, if something isn't about her, she finds a way to make it feel like it's against her." I stared at that message. It was the most honest thing Caroline had said in years. "You ever get tired of translating for her?" I asked. "Every day," she replied. "But someone has to." "Do they? If I stop, she'll stop talking to me too." I didn't answer because I didn't know how to tell Caroline what I'd finally learned, that maybe letting someone stop talking to you wasn't the worst thing. Maybe it was freedom. 2 weeks later, the university published a video of my speech. It circulated quickly. Then the calls started again from relatives and old friends. It should have felt good, but I was starting to see that success couldn't fill the places where love should have been. It could only make the gaps more visible. Caroline called the week before Christmas. Would you be willing to come home for New Year's instead? Just for a day. It's less formal. Just us. I hesitated. Is Mom okay with that? She doesn't know I'm asking yet, but I thought, maybe if it's just us, it could be better? I could hear something in her voice. Not guilt, just weariness. That same tightrope walk I'd done for so long. I'll think about it, I said. When the 31st came around, I found myself boarding a morning flight to Columbus. When I pulled into the driveway, Caroline came out to greet me. She looked surprised, genuinely. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't either. Inside, the house was quiet. My parents were out visiting neighbors. It was just us and a pot of chili Caroline had made. She handed me a bowl. I wanted to ask you something about your speech. Sure. You said something about building a ladder from dismissals. She hesitated. Do you think I've been part of that? The dismissals? I looked at her. Really looked. Not on purpose, I said finally. But still, she pressed. Yeah, sometimes. Caroline looked down at her bowl, then back up. I'm sorry. I think I wanted them to love me so badly that I let them make me the center. I didn't realize what it was costing you. It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged it. Not just my pain, but their role in it. I didn't cry, but something in my chest loosened. Thanks, I said. That means more than you know. She reached across the table and took my hand. And for the first time in years, the silence between us felt like something that could be rebuilt. Not perfectly, but honestly. I was halfway through folding laundry when I got the email that changed everything. Subject: Congratulations! You've been selected for Forbes 40 Under 40. My breath caught. Not because I'd been aiming for it, but because suddenly everything I had worked for was about to be broadcast in a way I couldn't control. The ceremony would be in New York. I was allowed to bring one guest. I stared at that part for a long time. Later that night, I thought about Caroline, how we'd sat in that quiet kitchen on New Year's Eve, how she didn't flinch when I told her the truth. So I texted her. I got invited to Forbes 40 Under 40. It's in NYC. Want to come as my guest? She replied in less than 5 minutes. What? Yes, I'll buy a dress tomorrow. I'm so proud of you, seriously. And she was. I could tell. It didn't erase the past, but it softened something. I didn't tell my parents. A week before the event, I got a voicemail from my dad. Heard the news, impressive stuff. Call your mother, she wants to talk. I didn't call back, wondering how he'd found out. Later, Caroline mentioned she'd excitedly told our cousin Emma about the award when they met for coffee, and word had quickly spread through the family grapevine. Caroline flew in 2 days early. She threw her arms around me like we hadn't seen each other in years. We stayed in a hotel off Central Park. The night of the gala, she helped me with my makeup. She insisted I wear the deep navy gown we'd picked out together. It brings out your eyes, she said. I looked in the mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. Not because of the makeup, but because I didn't look like I was waiting for permission to be proud. The event was a blur, but the moment I walked onto that stage and held the plaque, something in me settled. Not because of the title, but because of the look on Caroline's face. She stood and clapped, like she'd been waiting her whole life to. After the ceremony, we walked back to the hotel in heels we both regretted. It was snowing lightly. You know, she said. When I told Mom we were coming, she didn't say anything. She just said, well, Ivy always liked to push herself. That was it. I laughed. That sounds exactly like her. I think she's jealous, Caroline said suddenly. She's your mother, too. I know, but she built her whole world around being the center of attention. You were supposed to orbit around her. Now people are looking at you instead. Later that night, Caroline reached for my hand. This was your moment, but thank you for letting me be in it. I squeezed her fingers. You earned it. She replied quietly, sometimes I think I spent my whole life trying to be liked, and you spent yours trying to be respected. That's not a bad summary. And the family chose likable. I let that sit for a while. Until now, I said. Back in Boston, things picked up again. The media requests increased. I did interviews, panels, wrote a piece for Scientific American. One Sunday, Caroline forwarded me a message from our mother. "Your sister looked polished in that interview." That was the entire text. I replied to Caroline with a single word, "Wow." She sent back, "I know, it's like pulling teeth." Still, Caroline kept reaching out. She asked about the company, my schedule. For the first time in years, our conversations weren't just reactive. They were curious. In March, about 2 months after the Forbes ceremony, she invited me to visit her in Chicago. "You won't have to see Mom and Dad, just me. I got a new place." Her apartment was modest but warm. After dinner, we sat on the floor sorting through an old photo album. One picture made me freeze. It was me, maybe 17, holding up a regional science fair medal. Behind me, slightly out of focus, Caroline with cake frosting on her cheek, laughing. "I don't even remember this," I said. "I do," she replied. "You won. And they didn't even come. They were at one of my recitals. I cried that night because I missed a note and they took me out for ice cream." My mouth went dry. "That was the day I decided not to need them," I said. Caroline turned the page. There was another photo. All 4 of us. Thanksgiving, maybe 10 years ago. Everyone smiling. "Do you think they'll ever change?" she asked. But maybe we will." She nodded. The next morning, we walked by the lake talking about everything except our parents, and maybe that was progress. On the flight home, I stared out the window thinking of that old photo, me with the medal, alone in a frame no one remembered. But now I wasn't alone anymore. I had a company, a team, a voice, and a sister who saw me. And maybe that was what I had needed all along. Not to be the golden child, not to win their praise, just to be real and to be heard. The final straw came in the most ordinary way. A text. It was from my mom, just a screenshot of an article featuring Caroline's new promotional campaign at her firm. Underneath, Mom had typed, "So proud of your sister. Isn't this lovely?" I stared at it for a moment. No question, no greeting, no mention of the magazine spread I'd just done, or the talk I was preparing to give in D.C., just Caroline, always Caroline. I didn't reply. Later that night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine. There was a request from a journalist who wanted to profile me, not just about the company, but about my background, my family. They wanted the full story, and for the first time, I hesitated. Not because I was ashamed of where I came from, but because I wasn't sure if they deserved to be part of this chapter. "Don't mention your job," my mom had whispered at dinner. I had obeyed for years, bit my tongue until it bled, tried not to outshine, tried to be gracious, tried to be quiet. And then I made Forbes 40 under 40. They only found out through Google. A few days later, the journalist emailed again, including a draft of the article's first paragraph. Ivy Morgan was never the loudest person in the room, but she was always building something, even when no one noticed. That line hit me like a wave because that was exactly it. I hadn't needed applause. I had needed acknowledgement, not for ego, but for clarity, for connection, and maybe even for love. Caroline called a few days later. "Did you see what Mom posted?" I hadn't. I barely checked Facebook anymore. She shared the Forbes photo again, said proud of both my girls, one with heart, one with hustle. I let the silence sit there. Caroline sighed. "It's like she can't compliment you without putting herself in the spotlight or putting me in your shadow." I know, it's exhausting. Then Caroline said something unexpected. "I think I'm going to pull back from them, just for a while. I need space." I felt my chest tighten, then soften. "You don't need my permission." "I know. I just wanted you to know." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. That weekend, I flew to D.C. for a talk. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of researchers, students, and policymakers and told the truth about what it meant to build something while invisible. Afterward, a young woman came up to me. "Can I ask something personal?" she said. "Of course." "How did you keep going when no one believed in you?" I looked at her and thought about late nights in undergrad, the dismissive comments from advisors, the way my mother once called my PhD defense a nice little presentation. I stopped waiting for belief, I said, and I started building without it. Turns out belief comes later. Sometimes from strangers, sometimes not at all, but by then, you won't need it. She nodded. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. Back at the hotel that night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm, settled, whole. It didn't matter if they ever understood what I'd done, if they ever saw the hours, the sacrifice, the brilliance of what I had created. Because I saw it, I lived it, I kept it alive. And Caroline had started to see it too. Not just my success, but my silence. The cost of being the one who always carried the weight while everyone else celebrated. A few weeks later, a package arrived at my office. No note, just a small framed photo. It was the same science fair picture Caroline and I had found in her album. The one where I held my medal while she stood in the background with cake on her cheek. But in this version, she had zoomed in, cropped it. The frame held only me, 17, proud, alone, but smiling. I placed it on my desk. That girl had done everything without applause, but she'd done it anyway. Now the world could see her. And even if the people at home never truly understood her worth, she finally did, and she wasn't going to shrink again for anyone.